Hi, I'm Randall, and ever since I was young, I've been a fan of the original Mad Max movie. The movie had it all. Great complex characters, over-the-top villains, incredible cars, and of course the cool motorcycles. I think that most people that watched that movie so long ago fell in love with some part of it and have secretly dreamed of driving the black-on-black Interceptor or tearing up the road on one of those motorcycles. So here we are, 45 years later, and for a lucky few, those dreams have come true. With the internet, you can connect to people all over the world and make your dreams of owning a replica a reality. Now, don't get me wrong, if money wasn't an issue, I'd be driving a blown Falcon XB with the body kit. But money is an issue, and since the Ford Falcon used in the movie was an Australian exclusive, it makes owning one here in America a little tougher. Now, I'm sure there are a few Survivor Falcons down under available for purchase, but finding one, importing it to the US, and doing what it would take to make it a movie replica would be quite an expensive endeavor. Now, the next coolest Mad Max vehicle, in my opinion, was Goose's motorcycle. Now, fortunately for us here in America, the motorcycle that was used was a Kawasaki KZ1000, and that wasn't exclusive to Australia. In fact, these bikes were available all over the world, and a lot were made and sold. Now, I also happen to be a motorcycle rider, so having a Goose replica, I feel, is an obtainable dream for me. And I know that many people around the world have taken the bikes, added the body kit with the fairings, and now own their own replica. So this is what I want to do too. But when I started researching what I would need to build my replica bike, I noticed there weren't any videos available walking through the process. So that's why I'm making these videos. I want to document the process of making Goose's motorcycle for Mad Max. Now, before I begin, I want to make a disclaimer. I am in no way affiliated with Mad Max, Warner Brothers, George Miller, or any other owner of proprietary property associated with Mad Max. I also want it to be known that there is no way I can do any of this by myself. There are a ton of people all over the world who have shared with me their knowledge of the motorcycle used in the movie, many on the Mad Max Facebook groups, and I owe them a great deal of thanks. Now, let's talk about the build. I know that many people like Mad Max 2: The Road Warrior better than the original, and I get that. But to me, the original had a complex yet classic storyline. Many compare it to popular westerns or samurai films and stories that are old as time itself. You have this guy that wants to do right, and he's walking a fine line between right and wrong in a society that is crumbling around him, forcing him to make desperate decisions. And when backed into a wall, he has to find justice that makes sense to him. It's a very satisfying story, even though a bit depressing, and it doesn't really have a happy, good feeling ending. And if you know anything about the production of the film, you know how amazing a film it is based on the shoestring budget, the issues with production, and the fact that this was George Miller's first film. Many feel like Mad Max put Australian movies on the map and paved the way for many other Aussie films. Regardless, it's one of my favorite movies of all time, and again, the cars and motorcycles are just great. So let's start with the motorcycle that George Miller used in the film. It was a 1977 Kawasaki KZ1000A with a custom body kit. You'll notice that some of the other motorcycles used in the film were also Kawasaki's with the same body kit. Since Goose was a cop, his bike had the flashing blue lights, a siren, and a CB radio. If you know anything about older Japanese motorcycles, you know that a lot of them are air-cooled inline-4 motorcycles. Honda has the CBs, Yamaha has the XSs, Suzuki had the GSs, and Kawasaki had the KZs. And unless you look hard and really know your bikes, they look a lot alike, which is why they're nicknamed UJM, or Universal Japanese Motorcycle. So in theory, any of the older air-cooled inline-4 Japanese bikes would have made a good donor for the Goose replica. Now, the story goes that George Miller got a local Kawasaki dealer to donate the bikes that were used in the movie. I wonder if a Honda or Yamaha dealer would have donated the bikes, would he have chosen one of them? One thing I do know is that the KZ1000 was considered one of the fastest super bikes of its time. It was the fastest motorcycle you could get in the late 70s, so that might have played a part in Goose's bike being a KZ1000. The KZ1000 was a very popular bike and was used as a police bike all over the world up until about 2005. There were a lot of these bikes produced, although many of them were used as drag racing bikes, which means they were modified beyond recognition with stretched swing arms and big bore engine kits. So finding one in good condition might be tough. Now, I've owned a couple of KZ1000s before and I really like them. They're great bikes. So I've decided to stay true to the movie and make my Goose replica from a KZ1000. Now, when searching for a donor bike, one of the most important things is that the bike is complete and in good running condition. Some of these parts are hard to find, and if you do find them, they're expensive. So little things like the side plastic covers are important. I started looking a few months ago, and although I found a few KZs for sale, I narrowed it down to a 77 KZ1000A that was in good running condition and looked to be complete. Unfortunately, it was about a 5-hour drive to where the bike was from me, but for the right bike, I'd make the drive. I ended up making the trek down, met the owner, saw the bike. Now, no 47-year-old bike is going to be perfect, but I needed to make sure that the repairs it needed to be a Goose bike were minor. The back tire was bald, the clutch stuck at times, and the front master cylinder was leaking, which were all minor repairs I could do myself. But it started up easy, it ran good. The owner said he rebuilt the engine with a 1075cc bore kit and put on some aftermarket CV carbs. So I haggled over the price, but ended up agreeing to a fair price and brought the bike home on a trailer. So now I have my bike and I can start fixing it up and riding it whenever I have some free time and the weather's good. The first thing I did was, of course, get the back tire replaced. Front tire was okay, so I left it alone. As far as the master cylinder went, I ordered a rebuild kit for it and quickly discovered that the KZ1000 had 2 different master cylinders depending on how many front brake calipers you had. I don't think my bike originally had 2 calipers, but it does now. The rotors are definitely not stock as they're drilled, and the brake lines had all been replaced with steel lines, which is a good thing. At this point, I decided it would be best to replace the master cylinder with a larger unit for the dual disc calipers. The paint was chipped off the calipers too, so I decided to go ahead and rebuild and paint them. I bought a cheap media blasting kit from my local Chinese-made tool store and cleaned the calipers up real nice. I hit them with high-temp primer, then caliper paint, and then high-tip clear coat. I think they turned out real nice after the rebuild. I took the clutch apart and found the steel plates were coated with a lifetime of grime, causing the friction plates to stick together if the bike sat for a week or two. So I used a Dremel tool, I cleaned them up, and I replaced the clutch discs, and now it shifts great, it doesn't lock up. One thing I didn't notice was that on Goose's bike, the front calipers were mounted on top of the forks, not behind the forks. Thanks to the guys at the Mad Max Facebook group for pointing this out to me. It was a simple swap of the forks, and the calipers now mount on the top. I will say I had a very hard time bleeding the air out of the lines. I had a Mighty Vac that didn't work. I hung them from the ceiling above the master cylinder trying to get the air out, and I even had a syringe to back bleed the calipers to the master cylinder. I was pulling my hair out when I finally got all of the air out, and now pressure's back, lever's nice and firm. So now I have a great sounding, great running bike that I feel is reliable enough to ride around town without the fear of it breaking down and leaving me on the side of the road. So I guess there's no turning back now. I'm well on my way to getting my very own Goose replica. I think this is a good wrapping up point for this video, but keep an eye out for my next video in the series. I'm going to go further into detail about Goose's bike from the movie and what my next steps are going to be in order to get the build complete. So until next time, as long as the paperwork's clean, you boys can do what you like out there.